This episode is brought to you by Nordstrom. Summer's almost out and fall's calling. Luckily, Nordstrom has everything you need for the season ahead, all under $100. Discover new arrivals from your favorite brands like Mango, Princess Polly, Wave, Free People, BDG, and more. Whether you're planning a last-minute getaway, heading back to class, or refreshing your office looks, you'll find the latest trends and beauty must-haves without breaking your budget. It's easy, too, with free shipping, free returns, and in-store order pickup. Shop today, in stores, and at Nordstrom.com.
Growing your e-commerce business comes with plenty of hurdles, but shipping shouldn't be one of them. Well, here's some good news. Powerful e-commerce shipping software called ShipExcel from Pitney Bowes. With ShipExcel, you can generate discounted shipping labels for both online and offline orders. That saves time and money with everything right at your fingertips. Start your free trial of ShipExcel from Pitney Bowes today.
That sound is the leaky shower head that came with your place. The one that has you starting every morning with a low-pressure nightmare that's nearly your age. Stop settling for someone else's shower. Consider this your wake-up call to swap it for the relaxing feel of a Moen shower head and see how one easy change changes everything. Water designs our life. Who designs for water? Moen.
This podcast is brought to you by Carvana. Buying a car shouldn't eat up your week. That's why Carvana made it convenient. Car buying that fits around your life, not the other way around. You can get pre-qualified for an auto loan in just a couple of minutes and browse thousands of quality car options, all within your terms, all online, all on your schedule. Turn car buying into a few clicks and not a full week's endeavor. Finance and buy your car at your convenience on Carvana. Financing subject to credit approval. Additional terms and conditions may apply.
Welcome to the Tour Coach here in 2023, another year of the stories, the conversations, the roundtable discussions that come from my travels on the PGA and the Korn Ferry Tours, along with my teaching down at Old Palm and Palm Beach Gardens, or here in my studio in Mobile, Alabama. These are the stories and the guests and the people that I run into that I bring to you to help you enjoy playing the game of golf, learning about the game of golf, or learning how to teach the game of golf. I hope you'll enjoy my travels, my conversations, and you enjoy being on this journey with me. But I also want to remind you that this journey and bringing it to you wouldn't be possible without a special thanks to our longtime sponsors. First and foremost, Strixon and Cleveland Golf, Vineyard Vines, Bushnell Golf, and Buick GMC. Without those, the Tour Coach and all these travels wouldn't be possible to bring these conversations to you. I hope you'll enjoy sitting in with me on another version here of the Tour Coach. All right, joining me here on the Tour Coach, been a while. It's been I was looking back, I think it's been almost 2 years, year and a half, 2 years since I had this guest on. He's seriously my favorite guest on the Dew Sweepers Radio. He's always the most prepared, always has something insightful to say. I always learn something, so it's good to be back here on the Tour Coach after we've had a few weeks off for the holidays and Memorial Day and kicking off summer and all that. But joining me is Brian Manzella. Brian, how you doing, buddy?
Doing pretty good, Tony. Looking forward to having this chat. I've thought about this episode for a little while since we've discussed it, a couple of weeks in advance. And had a conversation on it. I think the folks who listen to this will get a kick out of it, and maybe hopefully even make them think a little bit. No,
I agree, and this all came. So give people a little background. Brian comes, at least once a month on, or maybe more, on my radio show in Mobile on WNSP. And the last time we got on, we got to talking, and just like you do, you got talking and you made a comment about the Mount Rushmore of teaching and coaching in golf. And we didn't have, obviously, time to go on it. And afterwards, we were talking off the air, and I said, hey, man, that'd be a great podcast segment. So I thought, anyways, you had some travels. I know you went over to Europe, and I think you went to Houston and some different things. And now we've got some time. So let's talk about the Mount Rushmore of golf teaching and coaching. Let's start with your thoughts of this process.
Well, as most things are for me, unfortunately, I am a counterpuncher. So I almost need to be pissed about something
Right.
before I really do my best job. That's how it was when I played football. I needed to get hit in the mouth early. Mm-hmm. And then I turned into whatever small little miniature green Incredible Hulk. I heard somebody somewhere talk about I guess on a podcast about their Mount Rushmore of teaching. I think this is something that on this particular podcast they asked everybody.
Okay.
And it was a particularly, in my opinion, horrific take
Okay.
at what the Mount Rushmore should be. And I'm not going to talk about it any more than that. That person's entitled to their opinion. I don't even think they believe what they said, but it's fine. So it made me think. And as you know for sure, and lots of folks who are listening to this know, my best friend in the business is Michael Jacobs, who's a top 50, top 100 teacher, friend of yours, and a lot of folks. And we have these kind of conversations when we don't have anything else to talk about, which we almost always do, though. And Mike helped me a bunch because he brought up some things that, his ideas on what that Mount Rushmore ought to be. And I didn't 100% agree with him, but close enough. And so what I did was, knowing I was going to be on here, I actually researched Mount Rushmore. And the guy, I guess it was the artist that decided on who the four people on the on the mountain were and why they were on the mountain. And he did it based on the father of the country, right, was obviously Washington, the growth of the country and the Declaration of Independence, which was Jefferson, right? And then you had development was Roosevelt, and then preservation was Lincoln. Mm-hmm. That's the thing. So I went, well, that's a pretty good way to do this.
Yeah. When you think of it in that terms, yeah.
I had about 6 people that I was trying to put on, the mountain has 4 people on it, right? And I wasn't going to go away from that, and I didn't. And so to me, the father of this crazy business that we're in, and, there's a lot of folks out there that, that probably listen to your stuff, and I know follow me, that would like to do what we do. Right. It sounds like a great idea as a business. I have a couple of junior golfers, one in particular that thinks that this is what he wants to do with his life, and I'm not trying to discourage him because it just beats the hell out of, selling widgets or digging ditches for sure, right? Mm-hmm. Or standing on a skyscraper with a rivet machine. But whatever industry this is, to me, the father of the industry, like a person who teaches golf that people who don't live anywhere near them might go see.
Okay.
Right? Mm-hmm. Because otherwise, how much could you charge? Right? I mean, like in any market in Mobile or New Orleans, which is Mobile is a 4th level market, and New Orleans is a 3rd level market, not a whole ton of money. You can't charge what Butch charges in Vegas for sure. So basically, I think that's Bob Toski. Now, people could make other determinations, and when we get further down my list, then you could pretty much see why it's not somebody else who may already be on my mountain for something else. But to me, I've been playing golf. I started when I was 10. I'm 61. I know there's other folks that are older than Toski, they're not older than Toski because Toski's still around.
Right.
And he's
older.
Right. But they did this with some notoriety and maybe even were destination teachers, which is my word. But I think fits the bill before Toski, but he was the first star. He was the first, this guy's supposed to be the best teacher. And even if he wasn't ever the best teacher, it doesn't really matter. Only the man upstairs knows that. To me, he's the father of the industry. So
right.
I thought, okay, Bob Toski. So then the growth part of it, the Jefferson part, to me is, and I thought some other people that I have on my little honorable mention list, because I'll give you one, for instance. Hank Haney was the first person that charged real prices. He was the first. Now maybe, Tommy Armour, and we'll talk about him in a second, but did as well. But that's because he was already famous as a player. It'd be like anybody we know who's a famous player who doesn't teach decided to teach. They could just, the day they started teaching, they could. Like Tiger wants to give a lesson, he can charge whatever he wants. Right?
Correct.
Right. So to me, that person is Ledbetter, because Ledbetter is the first person that was that the current business that we're in. He more or less invented it.
I'd agree. I agree with both your selections so far.
But on paper, right? But on paper, he was the first person that. I don't think my mom. If I said mom, my mom's 93. Her birthday was yesterday. Mom, have you ever heard me say the name Hank Haney? She might, say yes. But if I say David Ledbetter, she may not know who David Ledbetter is.
But she knows.
She knows who David Ledbetter is. So she probably got Golf Digest out of the mailbox, and
right.
He was on the cover or something like that. So he's the first person that elevated this business / mini industry to some sort of you could, believe me, you and I haven't done this, get rich as a golf teacher.
No. Yeah.
Look, there's other people that might have got rich as a golf teacher before David Ledbetter, but he made it seem possible. He was the guy that, well, you're going to try to make it. And you got a couple dollars in your pocket, you're going to go see Ledbetter. And there was a time where that was true. I remember.
Yep, for sure.
And it didn't always go good, and we can talk about all that stuff later, but there's no doubt that somebody needs to build a statue to Ledbetter. So the development one was tough. The Roosevelt one was tough because if you look at Roosevelt being on that thing, there's a lot of people could have been in Roosevelt's spot. He's not in the top 4 most famous presidents, right? He's not. A lot of people don't even know he's on Mount Rushmore, but he's on Mount Rushmore. And I read the official National Park Service. I read the whole thing. So to me, that person, and there's a lot of people would be really close, is Jim McLean. So Jim McLean's probably made the most. Okay, this is my contention. Jim McLean has generated more money in the business that he didn't directly create, right? In other words, if you do a Tony golf school, and you've done them, and I've done, golf schools as well, and me and Mike do them, and we have somebody work for us at that thing. That's to me, that's what I mean by not directly. Somebody's
absolutely
not paying me. Yeah, it's my assistant who wouldn't have. I don't have one, but I mean, we have understudies, right?
I've
and you do too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when those people, they wouldn't have done a golf school, that particular golf school, if you wasn't doing it, or I wasn't doing it. In this case, McLean, and then of that, not only has he had and still has a bunch of people teaching for him, and now at the Biltmore, formerly the RAL, right? That are given doing tremendous numbers, of which he's taken a cut. That's the whole point of this, that you can only give so many lessons, and you can only charge so much an hour, and then the only other way you can make money is with something else, and that something else, the most direct one to get you on a mountain, is other teachers that you trained, that you hired to work for you under your brand, and then you take a percentage and you do golf schools and stuff like that. And he's at the top of that list. And the tiebreaker there, because there's other people I could, hear, teachers listening to this thing, going, this Manzella guy, boy, I tell you. What about this? Yeah, but the tree, right? That has to be some kind of way. Has to be important. How many people did you put your hand on at least at some period of time that are out there and they're on friggin' lists and they're teaching famous players and all this kind of stuff. So he makes it there. Now, it's a little interesting that, and I think Jim is slightly older than David Ledbetter. Not 100% sure they're close to the same age. It's interesting fooling with that generation because they're only like a half generation older than me, right?
Right.
I
know the feeling. I know the feeling.
So I got McLean there. And then the preservation, the Lincoln thing, nobody has threatened this business yet, although my business has been threatened a few times. But overall, who has elevated this to the next level? And I think that's Butch. Butch Harmon gets the Lincoln spot, not because he saved us from any Gulf Civil War, which actually the Gulf teaches Civil War actually exists, but there is no Lincoln. He's
FYI, David's 70, Jim is 73. I just looked it up on the Google machine.
Good for you. I would have missed that.
That actually surprised me a little bit. I would have thought it would have been the other way.
Well, I had those guys a little bit older than that. So, boys, if y'all are listening to this, I'll shake your hand and apologize next time. I would have said Jim 74, 73, and David like 72. But I wasn't that far off.
No.
I'm 61. There's probably people think I'm 100. Okay. So that's a pretty good Mount Rushmore, right? Toski, Ledbetter, McLean, Harmon. Now, give me your rebuttal to any of those names because there's plenty of it now. I'll tell you right now.
You surprised me
yesterday.
You surprised me.
I went through this with Jacobs yesterday, and he went, "How the hell can you not have Harvey Penick on your 4?" I don't, and I have my reasons, but he did give me one interesting, I
want to hear this.
Your show. I want to hear what you have to say, but I just wanted to get this out because I'll just forget it. There was a tiebreaker with one of the people, not going to say who, right? And he said, who would you rather take a lesson from? He said, there's your tiebreaker. So that's how one of these people got on the list. There were two people that were pretty even, and he said, well, who's got the best stuff? That should be important, right? We actually give golf lessons, so the actual golf lessons should be pretty important. But go ahead, tell me about your.
No, I was thinking about this yesterday. I was just hanging out, and I was thinking about I was trying to guess who you were going to pick, right? And because I have known you a good while, we've done a zillion of these on radio, and so you shocked me because I really, I was like. I think everybody listening wouldn't you agree? There's probably maybe 7 or 8 people people that teach a lot of golf around, but there might be different 4, but I think we come to,
Well, if anybody's got somebody that's not on my honorable mention list that I'm going to go to next, then I really apologize because I think everybody on the honorable mention list.
Yeah,
that pretty much covers it. But I'm sure,
right?
I mean, I didn't spend 100 hours on it. I'm sure that I missed somebody. But yeah, you would think,
right?
If you went through the top 100 teacher list and all its branches, right? The Hall of Fame and the guys who used to be gals that used to be on it. You got all of that family together, and then the people that aren't, I think. Have been on the top 50 Golf Digest list. And you send something to all of them and say, "Hey, give me your Mount Rushmore." 7 or 8 people would be way out in front, and then you would have a big drop off.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, so if you go through my list, I would put I would be partial to Toski probably because a lot of the people I came up under, Hank, Wayne Flint, Mark Wood, all worked with Toski, and I've heard tons of Toski stories, right? But I could also see it'd be a tough decision. If you broke it down the way you did about how they put the people on Mount Rushmore, I also have a hard time going with what Michael said, not putting Harvey on there, right? But those would be the two that I bounce back and forth.
But one of the other things Mike said and I don't know that this is true, but sounds good to me. Of all the name teachers, and we're barely name teachers,
right,
but sort of kind of, who's given the most golf lessons? Ooh, probably Harvey, right? Because he did it for so long.
Correct. At a club,
but he
where
was
he
head pro too,
Yeah.
So it wasn't like he was just standing out there teaching all day long. But anyway, there's one good reason to have Harvey on there, and that book that he sold 10 trillion copies.
Mm-hmm. So I would put the only other thing I would like. I'm a big Butch fan. I think you could almost, and this isn't what the mountain's about, but you could put the Harmon family as a family on the Mount Rushmore. If you know what.
Well, if you had a golf professional,
right?
As opposed to professional golfer, Mount Rushmore, then the Harmons have a wing.
Right, for sure. I just, I've had done a couple schools when I was at Frederica with Billy, and he was amazing. I know from teaching Lucas for 5 years or so, the impact that Dick had. I don't know Craig, but obviously he was forever at Oak Hill. I just was saying you could almost, Butch, obviously, for his impact on what we do, which is what the mountain's about. But I think you could also say, like, the impact, the family. But I also can see where you could go with that when, you said a professional Mount Rushmore. But and I agree 100% with McLean and what he's done. The teaching tree, I think, is very important. And you and I have talked about that, and I've talked about that on a variety of things because, like I said, I came up from one. And, I think the influence you have on teachers that come up behind you and your influence on those, helping mentor them is a big piece of what we do.
Well, and I don't want to derail my goofy order in my head, but one of the things that I wanted to at least touch on was because I had another. I'm going to leave his name out of this. I had another top 50 teacher on the phone, and we were talking about it, and we started going into more current. And I said, here's one way to look at it, right? If you're doing current, like if you're going to do a separate list, say, okay, these guys are on one list, one mountain, and you have a little smaller mountain over here that's made out of wood, and they're just going to have a little mini thing. To me, the way to do the current list would be starting from whoever number one is. Who would you be able to take out of the discussion? There has never been I don't want to pick on anybody, so I'll use football coaches. If you take, Charlie McClendon, right, the old LSU coach. If you take him out of, he never was a head coach because he was a long, long time assistant, and then Dietzel left and he became a head coach. If you take him out of the story of college football, could you tell the story of college football? Probably barely, right? Like it might mess up the story, right? Mm-hmm. But he's right at that. He's right on the borderline. If you pull him out of the history of college football and everything that he had something to do with, how close is the story to the story of college football? He's right on the borderline. And there are teachers like that who, if you pull them out, even though they're way more famous than other teachers that would have more of effect, you pull somebody out and then you can't tell the story, the whole story changes. That's pretty important too, right? Mm-hmm. So that was part of my deal. Because I can tell you right now, when people listen to this, because if I do something, people listen whether they like it or not. There are people listening who think they ought to be on that Mount Rushmore, and they're mad at me right now. Yeah. This is a vendetta against me. I ain't got no vendetta, man. Let me tell you, I vote for people who I think deserve it. And this goes for any votes I have.
I agree with that.
The top 100, whatever. You got, otherwise, then basically you like in golf, right? What do they always say? You saw the guy over there moving something he wasn't. You got to protect the field. Mm-hmm. There you go. So if you vote, just because you dislike somebody, you're not going to vote for them or something like that. Then that's a terrible way.
I agree with that. I think and I think in our industry, that's a big thing. Obviously these lists and some of these rankings are important to people's career and what they earn and so forth. And I try to, when I have been part of something or vote on the digest deal, I really try to take the personal. I've voted for people that I don't particularly like, but I think are good at what they do and deserve recognition.
There's no doubt about it. So I'm going to, here's my, and please comment as I go here.
Okay.
Sure. This is my honorable mention. It's long. The honorable mention.
All right, we got about 10, 15 minutes. So
all right, here we go. Ernest Jones, right?
Yep.
He's got a tree. He was the first person that probably somebody went out of,
Yep.
state to take a lesson from, in the Spalding building in Manhattan. Alex Morrison's got a hell of a tree. He's got Jack Grout on it, Mm-hmm. Tommy Armour was probably the first. You're going to pay a lot of money for a destination teacher guy,
right.
Really, even though he was partially that came from the fact that he was a player. Harvey Penick that you and Mike Jacobs would have probably put on the thing. Jim Flick, who, I thought was a sweetheart of a man, and I never really liked what he taught, and I had one famous debate with him, and he was probably right, and I was probably wrong, but we'll leave that for another day. John Jacobs probably deserves to be on the Mount Rushmore, and that's probably my most glaring.
Okay.
Right.
Yep.
If you would just go in top 4 teachers of all time, he would have been on that list. The reason he wasn't was I was trying to stay true to the Mount Rushmore.
Okay.
By the way, opposite of Jim Flick, I'm sure a sweetheart guy, never met him. I met Jim a few times. John Jacobs, in the last 20 years of his life, and he lived a pretty, long life. I hope we get the opportunity to do that. The man upstairs says so. The last interview he did, I literally didn't disagree with anything. And if I would have read something that was a similar interview that was done with me 10 years ago, I would disagree.
Right? No.
Some of it. Like everything that he said in that interview, and he said like 50 things, I went, yep. Hank Haney was the person who, and I don't mean anything by this. Hank Haney might give me a better lesson than Jim McLean. I think Jim McLean's body of work that's not teaching the books and the videos are better than Hank's. Sorry, Hank.
I'd agree with that. I like that point too. I think that when you evaluate teachers, and it goes for lots of things we've talked about, I think your length of and body of work is important. I think everybody's there's a lot of people that have had a flash of success over a short period of time and had a good player or burst on the scene in 3-4 years or 5 years. But I think like what you said about Jim's the body of work that he's, from the stuff he's written to still being relevant, to still coaching and teaching, to doing radio, to doing schools, I think is impressive and 100% should be up there.
And probably slips him by Hank. No offense. Hank is a first ballot Hall of Famer. If you start another, I know there's one Hall of Fame, but there'll probably be more. Jim Hardy has an unbelievable tree, is still relevant. Right, still around like these guys, and right there with Jim, Mike Adams, giant tree, still pushing the envelope, still doing things, has a body of work. Like, he would say, well, I've got more books than Jim. You probably do, right? I mean,
right.
So, but part of what made this thing tough for me was they got guys that are current. They're not that much older than me.
Right. No.
So, they're competitors, and I wouldn't keep anybody off because they're a competitor. But I'm just saying that's part of it. It's hard to evaluate people, unfortunately, right? That a lot of people don't get their due until they're gone and didn't get enough of their due when they were around. And then the last name that's on this, and I put it last on purpose, is Ben Doyle. That was the only thing I had close to a teacher. Right. Yeah. And even though golf swing wise, I probably listened to him and did what he said by the letter for only a couple of years of the many, many, many decades that I knew him, has an awful good tree.
Oh,
if you were doing current trees, there's a famous, and if this takes up my time, it's worth it.
Yeah,
so Brandel Chambly, and is one of those guys that everybody wants to debate. But, and I think my detractors would put me up there, I'm going to beat his ass. I don't know if Mickelson is or anybody else is, but if we start talking golf instruction and we get on live from the map, he's going to lose. I'm a better arguer than him. I'm louder than he is. Like, he can't talk over me. And I'm just going to hit him with stuff because I've been doing this for 40 years. He's been talking about it for a decade. We were at a top 100 thing, and you were there, and we had a little dust up about TrackMan. But I won that one too. But the one that nobody heard because somebody took the mic from me, because they thought I was winning over the crowd. I don't think they like me. But either way, the simple deal is that he had said a couple things about Ben without mentioning Ben's name. Mm-hmm. So I was going to say, hey, over here, Manzella, one more time, Brandel. The guy you were mentioning, like off and on there, that you, for whatever reason, hey, a lot of people have give bad lessons. His name is Ben Doyle, and he's not on this planet no more, so he can't hurt you. So I just wanted to give him his due. And by the way, I'm going to now get off of this chair and stand up. And then I want everybody in this room, and there were it was 200 people in the room. Everybody who thinks in their heart they wouldn't be in this room if Ben Doyle had never lived on this planet, y'all stand up too. The 50 or 60 or 70 people would have got up.
Yeah.
So
for sure.
I don't think that gets Ben on the Mount Rushmore, but he's on that second list now. Just on that, not on his body of work for teaching or anything else. Because at the end of the day, part of what you can leave people in this industry is besides the written word and videos and stuff like that, right? When you're gone, they'll still be out there. Is the people that you influenced,
right? That
would give you credit. Now, look, I've influenced a lot of people that wouldn't give me any credit, but that's fine. I'll take the credit.
Yeah.
Anyway,
you've had a big influence.
Yeah. So here's a kind of an interesting thing that we talked about real quick. There ought to be some lists you don't want to be on, and the number one list that nobody should want to be on, and I can tell you 100% I'm not going to be on this list. Who has done the least with the most? In other words, the criteria for this one would be the next 100 people that tee off at Pebble Beach, 90% of the people with a lie detector test on would say they've heard of them, right? Mm-hmm. So Robbie, is it Robbie or Bobby? It's Robbie Shelton, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Robbie and Bob. Yeah, Bobby Wyatt, Robbie Shelton. Yeah.
Yeah, those guys, right? So I'm using those guys as an example because they wouldn't. 90% of the people who teed off at Pebble Beach yesterday didn't know who they are.
Right, for sure.
Right, but 10 years from now, everybody might know. But I'm just saying, that's what I'm talking about. So people just a little bit more well known than those guys because I thought they were perfect. Baseline. So known players, Sam Randolph was a known player and Hank Haney taught him off the tour. There's no big deal. I'm sure if I would have had more opportunities, that would have happened to me too. But I'm just using that as an example. Sam Randolph was a pretty well-known guy back in the day. Not now. He ain't going to be one of those. So the point is that should be talked about. It's never talked about because nobody wants to be controversial. And I'm not anywhere near as controversial as I'm supposed to be. So I guess I must start trying to live up to it. But there are people, and you know who they are more than me because you're way out on tour more than I have been lately, with David being on the senior tour and all that. But 40 guys that everybody's heard of, and like maybe one guy like finished top 10 a couple times after having a bad year and nobody won. That's a 0 for 40 the way I look at it. So, it's a weird business, and that part of the business, because this is the from the tour. What's the name of this podcast?
Right, Tour Coach. Yeah,
it's Tour Coach Podcast. So
I may have to rename it if I keep getting fired, but yeah.
There's only two kinds of students, the ones that have and the ones that are gonna.
Yeah, I know.
And so it's just one of those things that nobody talks about, and it's talked about. When people are on the telephone, it's like there's something not quite right about tour coaching. Is that obviously it seems to me that there's a concerted, maybe unspoken effort to keep people who aren't on tour teaching from being on tour teaching, right? There seems to be like a lack of new blood, even though there's 50,000 people teaching golf in the United States who probably gave 100 lessons last year. And, we were talking about that the other day, and that you can't get on I guess you could get on the Mount Rushmore if somebody does a show like this 20 years from now without tour guys.
Yeah, I think you will be in the future. I think because of the way, whether we like it or not, stuff's gone to social media and content, and hell, we're even putting content out. I mean, I think that, I think you're going to get, like you said, if we did this 20 years down the road, there probably would be somebody on that Mount Rushmore that's, that didn't teach high-level players that just had a big influence.
Yeah, well, I'm sure the people that are saying, okay, so you had Haney over here in one hand and you had Jim McLean on the other hand, and Haney's got all these majors, with two guys mostly, right? Mm-hmm. The one, and McLean doesn't really have it, that. And I mean, overall, if you just looked at the players from top to bottom, you probably maybe give a slight nudge to Hank. But I think there's going to be people who listen to this podcast that are going to agree. If you got to put one of those two guys on your Mount Rushmore, it's Jim.
I agree 100%, right? And with the reasons for his.
So Toski taught a ton of tour players, but that was back when people really weren't, they didn't have a guy flying out to the next event for sure.
Right.
That didn't exist. I mean, like the first time I went out with David on tour in '91, I mean, there were people borrowing my video camera because I was the only one that had a video camera on the driving range. It's just think about how it's the Stone Ages, babe. So, I think that, I've always wanted to be the best, and I'm 61, and I'm hoping I get another 20 years of, really being relevant, because it ain't that easy to get on one of these. No. Somebody doing this 20 years from now, you're going to have to figure out a way, especially without, getting lucky, right? And just having somebody that makes, because I think anybody that could have had Tiger probably would have won a couple. Maybe.
For sure. No, I don't think anybody would have messed him up.
Before he got hurt.
Yeah, messed him up so bad he wouldn't win one, right?
But I really like the history of all of this, right? I mean, I think it's fun to discuss, and it's not discussed enough. And because of that, you're sort of losing the history, sort of getting a little bit buried, right? Like you could do a whole show on any of those people, Alex Morrison or Ernest Jones, or, while there's still people that have, somebody like Jim McLean or Mike Adams, somebody that's, a half generation older than me, they know way more about those older guys because they may have actually known them.
Right. Absolutely.
They may have actually like, hey, yeah, I talked to Paul Berkeley all the time. I mean, Paul Berkeley taught in New Orleans for a while. I didn't know who he was. See? So, but there are people, that know people that are 10 years older than people I know because they're 10 years older than me or more. And Toski's probably met every one of these guys, right? Yeah. So I just hope that in the future, folks that have the platform to, get people on to talk about this kind of stuff and more in instruction history, do it. And I really appreciate you having me on.
Well, Brian, I love it, and I love this part of it. And, again, I mean, I did one of these not long ago. I had Wayne and Mark Wood on with Luke Herdenine. Luke had gone through old digest archives and found some old Hank stuff, Johnson, and I mean, It was cool. Like and heck, some of the stuff was the same stuff. I mean, a lot of it was exactly the same stuff I use and teach today. But I think with all of the info out there, sometimes I think this conversation's wonderful because I think there's some people we often overlook how brilliant they were for their time, and you can argue whether all their stuff was right, but they were doing the best with what they had. Right? It's not like any of those older people had Jacobs 3D and just refused to look at it or use it. I mean, the stuff wasn't available then. There weren't force plates and there weren't.
It wasn't available, but I can tell you this: if Ben had Ben had a list of, I think it was like the top 100 was first, yeah, and he had a list of the top 100 at that time. Mm-hmm. I think it wasn't the first or second; might have been the third version, right? Mm-hmm. Every 2 years, and he had it highlighted up, right? Mm-hmm. And he said, "You see these guys right here," and he was looking at these are the people that have come take a lesson from me. And then he had orange or different color highlighter on the left, like a little dot.
Yeah.
And here's the people that have bought my video, which was $100 video when nobody had $100 video.
Nobody,
and it was like. Yeah, it was like 40 of the people had taken a lesson from him, and 70 of them had the video. So that, by definition, that gets you somewhere. I can tell you that now. So how many people out there are actually learning stuff from a current teacher that they may go teach tomorrow? Because I can tell you there's stuff that I wouldn't go near.
Yeah.
So. But I listen anyway, right? Because there may be some shred of truth, and maybe I get an idea. But there's no list for that, but they ought to be.
There should be. Absolutely. Brian, this was awesome. We got to do this again. Got to bring you back. Got to wait. I got to do it in less than a year and a half or whatever it was last time.
We got to get an older guy than me on. All
right, let's figure out who the older guy is going to be, and I'll bring him. We'll do it. Well, three of us will do one together.
And I think it has to be at least somebody in the age of those, guys like McLean and I think Butch is like 75 or 6, right?
So, he's close to 80 now, I think.
Oh, really? Yeah. Mm-hmm. See,
Mm-hmm.
But that you know what? The longer that Butch does what he does, the way he does it, I know he doesn't travel on tour and all that stuff, but there's still people going to see him.
Yeah, 100%.
That gives me hope. That gives me
no question.
Hope, because it's like he's still doing it at 78 or whatever age he is. Then damn it, I got a good run left in me, so I'm going to try like hell. So one day somebody's talking about me like this.
Brian, I appreciate it as always. Thanks for sitting in with me. Thanks for hanging out, and look forward to catching up soon, coming on over to New Orleans.
Absolutely, Tony. Always a pleasure.
All right, see you, brother. I hope you enjoyed this edition of The Tour Coach and this conversation that we brought to you about playing, learning, and teaching the game of golf. We'll be back next week with another edition of The Tour Coach. In between now and next week, make sure you follow us on our social channels. You can always find me at The Dew Sweeper on Instagram, or go to our YouTube page where you'll see a scene and a video from my teachings daily on our YouTube channel. You can find that by looking up Tony Ruggiero and the Dew Sweepers on YouTube. Until then, make sure you follow and check out Everything Tour Coach and all our sponsors: Shrixon Cleveland Golf, Bushnell, Vineyard Vines, and Buick GMC. I'll be back next week to help all of us appreciate, learn, and enjoy the game of golf.